Happy video day, guys. So for today's video, we're going to be doing a first impression on a brand new release from Natasha Denona. So this is her Metropolis palette and it just finished releasing on her website and I was so excited to pick it up. The colors in here are very unique, very pretty, and there's some special qualities about this palette. There's also some things that are a little questionable about the palette. So in this video, I'm going to be getting into everything, guys. I'm going to show you everything you need to know before you purchase this palette to see if it's right for you. So in this video, I will be giving you guys swatches. I will be doing some comparisons to other Natasha Denona palettes, as well as the Urban Decay Born to Run, which is a palette that a lot of people keep saying that this is very similar to. I'm also going to be showing you how I came up with this eye look and giving you guys my thoughts on this palette. Being somebody who does own a few other Natasha Denona palettes, I kind of have a few things to say about this one. But before we get into all of that, if you guys are new to my channel, I'm Christina Brooke and this is the GLAMRANCH. And if you guys want to just take a few seconds just to hit that subscribe button so that you guys can find me again and be part of the GLAMRANCH family, I would really appreciate it. And you know, if you like the video, thumbs up will always help too. But let's go ahead and let's get into everything I know about this new release, the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. So the first thing I usually talk about is the packaging. When you guys do get the palette, it does come in like this dark aqua carton. Usually Natasha Denona palettes always come in this type of carton. They're very basic. They just say Natasha Denona on them. So the cool thing about this is this actual packaging kind of resembles the gold palette and the lila palette, only those kind of like are made to look like leather, and this one is more made to look like a patent leather because it kind of has like more of a shiny look to it. And on the back, it just basically is blank. So that's typical to most of her palettes, but when you open this palette up, oh my god, it's so freaking pretty. To me, this is such a beautiful palette. It does have a nice size mirror. I tend to never really use the Natasha Denona mirrors, not because they're not good, it's just in my opinion, the palette's a little heavier. I like to lay it flat on a table, and I like to use a very lightweight mirror. That's just the way I like to work with eyeshadow, but you can definitely use this mirror if you're out or if you're like traveling and you need a mirror. It's definitely a decent mirror. Inside of it, you also do get this removable slip. This is kind of like to protect the shadows from getting all over the mirror and dirtying it. But if you guys don't like this, you can rip this part off and you can just pull it off. The only reason I leave them on mine is because I don't like the mess that happens. I mean, I'll show you guys just my gold palette, just so you guys, if you guys are considering removing this, look how messy my gold palette is. My gold palette is destroyed because I use it like crazy. And this little guy kind of keeps everything over here and my mirror stays really nice and clean. So that's the only reason I would suggest you guys not to remove that plastic. But if it gets in your way and you hate it, you can take it off. Once you open it up, I do want to talk about these shades for a moment because these shades are so beautiful, so rich. It kind of reminds me of like an industrial palette. It's very beautiful. I was really drawn into these colors. You do get a nice array of mattes, shimmers, metallics. And then when you close the palette, it is metallic. So it does have that metallic closure like the rest of her palette. So this is very sturdy, very pretty, very well designed. And I want to just get into talking about the actual palette itself because I love the colors in here, guys. I think it's so beautiful. Like honestly, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh. So this palette retails for $129 US. The special thing about this palette is it is a limited edition palette that's including 28 shades. So usually Natasha Denona's 28 shade eyeshadow palettes, they retail for around $239, and that's because they are larger pan sizes. So in celebration of her 28 shade eyeshadow palettes, she decided to come out with this MIDI size palette. So that's what she's referring to it as. She's never released a palette this size. This has 28 shades in it. However, the pan sizes of this palette are very similar to her minis. Now, I do believe that she did say that the size of the pans is the exact same size as her minis. Looking at them in person, actually look a little bit bigger than these, but then again, it could just be the pan size. However, the quantity of product is the same. I'm not 100% sure, but they're very similar in size to her minis. So for me, I was very excited to be able to get a 28 shade pan palette from Natasha Denona for this price point because I do love her formula so much. And me personally, I do not go through eyeshadows very quickly. So I would honestly rather a lot of brands come out with eyeshadow palettes like this in this size rather than the larger pans, because since I don't use just one palette all the time, these larger pans, I just don't go through them. So now that I've told you guys the price, I've talked about the packaging, we've seen the shades. So let's talk about the different finishes in the palette. So inside of the palette, you're getting 10 metallic shades, 13 matte shades, 1 dual chrome, 3 high shines, and 1 shimmer. You are getting a pretty decent amount of mattes versus like the shinier colors. There is a lot more like metallics and dual chromes and high shines in this palette than there are mattes, but I do think in the palette there's a pretty good selection between mattes and more metallic-y shades. So now I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys some swatches. So first I'm gonna show you guys in the studio, this is the first 14 shades of the palette. So this would be the first 2 rows of the palette. And I'm also gonna show you guys this in daylight because I just feel like you can really see the shininess and the reflectiveness in the daylight even better than you can see it in the studio lights. So this is the first 2 rows of the palette. So now let's jump into the last 2 rows of the palette. So this is the last 14 shades in this palette, and I really feel like this color selection is really, really vibrant. Now let's see these same swatches under daylight so you guys can see how reflective and beautiful these shades look underneath the daylight sun. So those are all the swatches. I really wanted you guys to appreciate how beautiful the palette looks, especially under daylight, which is where you guys are going to be wearing this palette the most. So now you guys probably want to see me putting this on my eyes and see my reaction as I was creating this look. So that's what we're going to do right now. I'm going to show you guys me applying this palette. I'm going to try to do something a little bit more, I want to say wearable, but wearable to who, you know what I mean? So let's go ahead and let's see where I can go with this. I kind of want to play with green, so I have green in my mind. I have to warn you guys though, as I was swatching these, some of these colors don't look exactly the same as they do in these pans, and I'm keeping that in mind. But I'm going to go into right here, dab this color all over the lid, and just bring it up into the crease. That's a pretty like orangey color. I'm also gonna bring that underneath the lower lash line. Now that I look crazy. Now we're gonna start playing with some greens because that's kind of like what I was kind of dying to do. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab into this green here at the end. Now this green actually translates a little bit darker on the lid than it does in the pan. I'm just gonna dab this, work my way up. I love this color. You guys can't tell already, that is a beautiful color. I think I'm gonna grab a bronzy tone. I don't know which one. I don't know if I wanna, I think I wanna grab this one here. So I'm gonna grab this one right here with my finger. Excuse my finger. I actually broke my nail. Like literally it almost fell off the whole thing. It's like cracked down the center, which is great. But if you guys have a toddler at home and you guys know how it is to chase after one that's like throwing things around and then you like kind of fall and then hurt your finger, that's what happened here. Now I find Natasha Denona's palettes all work better with your finger, the shimmery formula. Now you can spray your brush. I just personally like to use my fingers, but when you have to get like in the inner part of your eye, you kind of have to spray your brush. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I have to get like inside and I need a spray brush. Now you're gonna get fallout on your face so far with this palette. I see fallout under my eyes, which I don't know, I'm used to that with Natasha Denona palettes, and that's okay with me. So now I'm just gonna go back into that hunter green that we started off the video with and just kind of blend it all in. The innermost part of my eye, I want to use one more shade, so I'm gonna jump into this one right here, which is kind of like a really nice inner corner highlight kind of color. So on the lower lash line, I'm also going to bring a little bit more orange because I kind of like want to see some orange on the lower lash line. So I'm going to just grab into this shade right here, the one that we started off with, this one right here. Okay, now with a brush, I'm just going to blend all of that down there. I think I was able to accomplish the little red that I wanted to see through. I have to admit, I really like the colors in here. So once I have my liner and mascara and my face is bronzed up and I get rid of some of this fallout, I'll be right back. So this is the final look, guys. And I have to say, I am loving the way that the look came out. It really, really reminds me so much of fall. And I really love the colors that I used. And I like the way that everything kind of mixed together. So I'm really, really happy and I really like the look. So let me tell you guys a few of my thoughts before we get into some comparisons comparisons between other palettes because I do have a few comparisons to go over because I compared this to 3 different palettes and I'm going to try to get through that quickly because there is a few comparisons to note. So while using the palette, I'm going to tell you guys a few things. The first thing is I believe that there is going to be people that are going to really, really love this palette, and I believe that there's going to be some people that are going to have a harder time with the palette, not because of the formula, because of the color selection. Now I'm saying that because the colors in here are a little bit unique, and I feel like some of them are very rich. I feel like some of these colors actually don't look as rich in the pan as they do in the swatch. Like for example, this color here, you wouldn't expect it to be as lime green as it really is. If you guys can see in the swatch, it is very lime green. Some of these darker navy looking colors, you would expect them to be very navy, but when you swatch them and when you put them on your eyes, they actually translate a little bit of a lighter blue. It's a little bit different the way that they look in the pan than the way that they translate onto the eyes. So when I first got the palette, I decided to start playing with it because I wanted to try to do like a blue look, and I was gonna do 2 different looks. But when I started using it, I was like, I wanna do greens, but I wanna add blue in it. And when I started to use this color here, the color that it gave me was not a dark navy. It was more of a lighter blue, and it just threw off my whole look, and I was like, ooh, no, scratch that, and I completely scratched the look. I believe that that might be a little bit of something for people to note. Like, you have to familiarize yourself with this palette. There's a lot of colors in here. The colors are beautiful, but become familiar with the way that they translate on the eye before you judge the palette, because now that I know the way that this one translates, I know not to mix it with like the green that I mixed it with before, because the colors together, they just don't jive. But if it would have been the navy, it would have jived. So that's just one thing that I noticed playing with the palette and playing with like 2 different color variations on the eyes. I did notice that. Once you understand like the color selection and how they work on the eyes, I think that there won't be a problem, but that is something to point out. I really do believe that the quality of the palette is really good. So this to me is very similar, up to par with the Sunrise and with the Gold and with the Lila. I do believe that this is a very similar formula. Most of everything I used blended really nice. The metallics that I swatched today were like insane, and also the metallic that I used on my eye worked pretty phenomenal. And the palette reminds me very, very much of the Gold palette, and also of the new Sunrise palette, if anything more like the new Sunrise palette, which reminded me of the Gold palette. So this palette is very in line with her quality. All it's gonna come up to though, guys, is gonna be color selection and whether you guys like the colors in here. In my opinion, if you guys have this palette right here, which is the Safari palette, I believe the Safari palette will be a really nice add-on to this palette. I think that these 2 together will work really good. This is primarily mattes, and this one has a lot of shimmery shades in it. And I just feel like these mattes are a little bit darker, and I feel like they might jive really good with this palette. So if you guys do have this palette, I do think it's a really nice add-on palette. I also think it's a good add-on palette to some of her other palettes, especially the Gold palette and also the Sunrise palette, but we're gonna get into that right now. Let's do a little comparison, because I do know that a lot of people were saying, oh my gosh, this is basically the Gold palette. And I want to talk to you guys about that, because when I first saw it on like the Instagram and like the pictures, I said, well, I can kind of see some similarities. Let me show you guys both the Gold palette and this palette side by side, so if you guys don't have the Gold palette, you guys can see it. When I was swatching this one and trying to see if I could find some comparison, one thing I'm going to point out to you is the Gold palette goes very gold. As it says, the Gold palette, I feel like there's a lot of mustards, there's a lot of gold in there, and it goes very like that mustardy theme. And this palette doesn't really go that route. I feel like it has more of like greenish undertones. I was able to find a few comparisons here. Let me go ahead and show you these. So this is a quick little screenshot so you guys can see these are the colors, and these are the comparison swatches of the ones that I found. So I'm also going to show you guys the comparison swatches under daylight so you guys can kind of see them. So there is few colors in here that I feel like are very similar. Very, very, very similar. Are they 100%? No. But I was able to find like 6 comparable colors, and out of those, I think 4 were very comparable. So considering that this is a 28 pan palette and the Gold palette is a 16 pan palette, I don't think that it's that comparable, being that there's only 4 shades that I truly think are very similar. We've settled the Gold palette. I think that the Gold palette is actually a nice add-on palette, but I do not think that it is like a dupe or like too similar of a palette. Okay, so now that we squared that one away, let's jump into the other Natasha Denona palette, which is the Sunrise palette, which a lot of people were saying, oh my gosh, but the Sunrise palette is very similar as well. I feel like the colors that I found in this palette that were spot on were a little bit more spot on than the ones I found in the gold palette. I did find 5 very similar shades, and of those 5 shades, 4 of them were very similar, like almost spot on. So I feel like, considering the fact you're getting 15 shades in here, it's not worth it, but you are gonna get like at least 4 shades that are very, very similar to the Sunrise palette. I'm gonna be showing you guys the swatches in daylight as well as the swatches on the screen so you guys can see them for yourself. So let's jump into the last one, which is the Urban Decay Born to Run. Now I feel like this is the one that I read a lot, especially on Trend Mood, that people were like, oh my god, that is so similar. And you know what? I did see that there was a lot of similarities in it, but there's also a lot of differences in it. The first thing I'm going to tell you guys is the Born to Run goes more into like the purple family, and it feels like they're jiving a little bit more in the purple family, whereas this palette, Natasha Denona brought the greens in and the blues, and there's only one green shade inside the Urban Decay Born to Run. But besides that, I will tell you guys, I was able to find a lot of very similar shades in the 2 palettes. For the Born to Run, I was actually able to find 8 shades that were very similar. So I feel like out of all the 8 shades, 7 of them, at least 7 of them were super similar. The Born to Run does come with 20 shades versus Natasha Denona's 28 shade palette, and 8-ish shades look very similar and 7 of them are probably spot on. That would be kind of like a call for you guys. I do think that Natasha Denona's palette goes very different than the Urban Decay. Besides those that really match, those are probably the only ones that match, and then the ones that don't match are very, very, very different. Like Urban Decay goes very purple, this guy goes very green. So the differences are very big, but the similarities are pretty similar. So that's the only one that I would say is the most similar. But at the same time, I stress to you guys that if you guys have the Born to Run, you don't have this palette. Like you don't, because the other colors that are not in the Born to Run are very different. Like they're super, super different. So those are the comparisons. Yes, there is some similarities in these palettes, but like I don't feel like Natasha Denona's other palettes were so similar that I feel like, oh wow, this is not different enough. It's definitely very different, and I really like the palette, guys. I really do. I think it's a beautiful color story. I think it's beautiful. It is limited edition, at least that's what she's saying right now. Will it be added permanently to the line one day? I don't know, but she is saying it's limited edition, and I love it. I honestly think that I'm gonna have so much fun with this palette, especially for me personally, mixing it with some other Natasha Denona palettes. It's just beautiful. And how many times can you get 28 shades from Natasha Denona for this price point? I think it's fantastic, and I would love it if Natasha Denona started doing a lot more palettes like this, because I just think it's phenomenal, and I really honestly love Natasha Denona's quality. It's really good quality shadows, and I really enjoyed the palette. Anyways, I hope I was able to answer as many questions as I possibly could for you guys. I personally love the palette. So anyways, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Don't forget, if you did, give me a thumbs up. I would love to hear your comments down below. If I didn't answer a question and you guys are thinking of buying this and there's something that you want to know, don't forget to leave that down in the comment section so that I can try to answer you as quickly as I can. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.